What if I told you that the best way to win a fight is to not fight at all? That's the mind-bending idea at the heart of a 2,500-year-old book that has guided everyone from generals to CEOs. Today, we're diving into the timeless genius of Sun Tzu's The Art of War.
This was written way back in ancient China, but don't let the age fool you. This is so much more than a book about war. It's really a masterclass on strategy, on conflict, and on human psychology. It's so powerful, in fact, that it's still required reading at places like West Point and Harvard Business School. And honestly, to really get the book, you have to understand the legendary and kind of a ruthless man who wrote it.
The story that really cemented Sun Tzu's reputation all starts with a completely wild challenge from a skeptical king. And this wasn't just some academic exercise. We're talking about a high-stakes, life-or-death demonstration of his principles. So how did Sun Tzu prove his radical theories on warfare? Well, it didn't happen on a battlefield. It happened in a palace courtyard with probably the most unlikely group of soldiers you could ever imagine.
Okay, so the story goes that King Ho Lu read Sun Tzu's book, and he was intrigued, but he wasn't totally sold. He basically said, "Your theories sound great, but can you actually prove they work in the real world?" And Sun Tzu never wanted to back down, accepted the challenge.
So what was the king's army for this test? Not trained soldiers. Nope. It was 180 of his palace concubines. Sun Tzu divides them into two companies. And then, in a move that was either brilliant or just designed to cause trouble, he appoints the king's two favorite concubines as the company leaders.
So he explains the drill commands very clearly, gets all the gear in place, and then gives the first order. The response? They just start laughing. Total, complete chaos and disobedience. Now here's where the story gets really good. You'd expect him to lose his temper, right? But he doesn't. He calmly takes full responsibility. He says, if my commands weren't clear, if my orders weren't understood, then that's on me. The general is to blame.
So he goes through the whole explanation again, painstakingly, making sure everyone is on the same page. He gives the order one more time, and they just start laughing again. They still think the whole thing is a huge joke.
This is the crucial turning point. He's done his job. The orders are now crystal clear. So Sun Tzu says, okay, but if my orders are clear and the soldiers still don't obey, then the fault lies with their officers. The blame now shifts directly to the leaders he appointed.
And the punishment for that failure? It was shocking. It was brutal. Sun Tzu ordered the two leaders, the king's most beloved concubines, to be executed on the spot. The king, of course, was horrified and begged him to stop, but Sun Tzu was firm. On the field of battle, a general's authority is absolute.
After the execution, with new leaders in place, the drill began again. This time, the women performed every single move with perfect, silent precision. Sun Tzu had made his point in the most dramatic way possible. Leadership is about clear instructions, yes, but it's also about absolute accountability.
Now, that story is an incredible lesson in discipline. But believe it or not, that's not the real heart of his philosophy. Let's get to his most famous and revolutionary idea, the one that turns our whole idea of victory completely upside down.
Here it is. For Sun Tzu, the greatest general isn't the one who wins battle after battle. The truly great general is the one who makes fighting completely unnecessary. The real goal is to outmaneuver, outthink, and psychologically defeat your opponent so that they give up without a single sword being drawn. Battle is the last resort, the result of a failure in strategy.
Think about the difference here. The standard idea of victory is you fight, you conquer, and you destroy the enemy's country. It works, but it's incredibly costly. Sun Tzu's ideal, what he calls supreme excellence, is a victory of the mind. You outsmart your enemies so badly that they simply have to surrender, leaving their country, their resources, and their army completely intact for you to take over. It's clean, efficient, and total.
So this all sounds great, but how do you actually pull it off? Well, Sun Tzu wasn't just a philosopher, he was a practical guy. He laid out a clear framework, basically a 5-point checklist for any leader to figure out if victory is even possible.
Let's quickly run through them. First, you have to know when to fight and when to walk away. It's about choosing your battles. Second, you need to be flexible enough to deal with opponents who are both stronger and weaker than you.
Third, your whole team from top to bottom has to share the same goal, that unity is a weapon. Fourth, you prepare, you stay patient, and you wait for your opponent to slip up. And finally, the leader has to have the freedom to make the critical calls without a boss micromanaging them.
Now, if you look at all of those keys, there's one central idea that runs through all of them, something Sun Tzu comes back to again and again, the absolute power of information. For him, knowledge wasn't just an edge, it was the entire game. This is probably his most famous quote, and for good reason. It's a simple but incredibly profound formula for success in any kind of competition. Winning or losing isn't about luck. It's a direct result of how well you understand your opponent's strengths and weaknesses, and just as critically, your own. The logic is just so simple and powerful. If you know yourself and you know your enemy, you can't lose. You'll win every time. If you only know yourself, but you're clueless about your opponent, well, it's a toss-up. You'll win some, you'll lose some. But if you're ignorant about both your enemy and yourself, Sun Tzu is blunt here. You are going to lose every single time.
It's this powerful, logical approach to conflict that explains why the art of war is still so relevant after more than 2,000 years. This isn't just some dusty historical document. It's a living guide whose influence has spread all over the world and across centuries. I mean, just look at its journey through time. You had legendary Chinese generals studying it to win their campaigns for over 1,000 years. Then, its wisdom finally travels to the West. It's translated into French in the 1700s, and then gets a major English translation in 1910. The principles in this book have been tested and proven over and over in countless different situations.
And that really brings us back to the core idea. Sun Tzu's wisdom forces us to look past the obvious brute force solution and find a smarter, more strategic path. So the final question it leaves us with is this. In your world, your career, your negotiations, your personal challenges, what battle can you win by choosing not to fight at all?
Subscribe now for more book summaries.